boys and girls, it's Miss Leonard, and today we are doing another science experiment. The Pennsylvania State Standard for today's lesson is here. By the end of today's lesson, you should be able to ask a scientific question and find the answer of this question through an investigation using scientific tools and facts. Today, I would like to know if different materials react the same or differently when stirred in room temperature water for 30 seconds. I'm going to be testing this out on 1 tablespoon of coffee and 1 tablespoon of sugar. If you would like to follow along with this experiment at home, you will need 1
tablespoon of coffee grounds, 1 tablespoon of sugar, a measuring spoon, 2 cups of water, and a stopwatch to measure 30 seconds per trial.
I think that my hypothesis or guess for this experiment would be that the sugar will dissolve after it's stirred around for 30 seconds or disappear, and the coffee grounds will settle at the bottom of my glass. Remember from our last lesson, when you perform a scientific experiment, you have to keep most things the same except for what you're testing. So for this experiment, the temperature of my water, the amount of material I stir in, the amount of time I stir for, and the amount of water will all remain the same. The only thing that we will change is the material we're stirring, coffee grounds in trial 1 and sugar in trial 2. So, here I have my measuring spoon. I'm going to pull up my 30-second timer. And we're going to start with coffee. I have a glass of room temperature water. I have a spoon to stir with. And the reason why we use measuring spoons instead of a regular spoon is so we get an accurate scientific measurement. And the reason why we use a stopwatch instead of just counting is so no matter who's performing the experiment, it's the same amount of time. So I'm going to hit start as soon as I dump this in. Ready, set, go, and begin stirring. Okay, boys and girls, now it's your chance. Shout out what you think will happen to the coffee when I stir it into the cup. Okay, that is the end of 30 seconds. I'm going to let this settle and record what I see. Looking at my water cup, it looks like some of the grounds have settled on the bottom, some actually settled up at the top, and the water turned a little bit murky brown. So on my data sheet, which has a title, How Do Materials React in Room Temperature Water, I listed the constants that I said earlier. I'm going to write down my observations, or what I noticed. So for coffee grounds settled at the bottom. And the top. And the water turned, I'll say light brown. Okay, now that I did my trial 1 with the coffee, it's time to do my trial 2 with the sugar. Taking the same tablespoon, I cleaned it out so there's no more coffee in it, to make sure I get the same exact measurement of sugar as I did of coffee. It's nice and flat in the spoon. I'm going to dump it into the same amount of water. And I will begin my timer as soon as I start stirring.
Do you think the sugar will react the same as the coffee?
Okay, time is up. I'm going to look at what I have here and record it on my observation sheet. It's actually completely clear, and on my observation sheet I wrote the sugar completely dissolved. Dissolved is probably a new vocab word for you. That means it completely went away and is now in the water and we can't even see any of the sugar. Back to my hypothesis at the beginning, I thought that the coffee grounds weren't going to do anything and just settle at the bottom and that the sugar would dissolve completely. Now I have to come to my conclusion or my answer to my experimental question, what happens when you stir sugar and coffee in room temperature water? It turned out my hypothesis was half right. The coffee I think was a little lighter or less dense than I thought it would be. So instead of settling at the bottom, it settled at the top too, and some of it dissolved into the water. The sugar did exactly what I thought it was going to do and dissolved. I hope that you guys will try this at home and maybe come up with your own experiments. Stay safe.